But these are some of the images that are emerging right now over there in Tehran, the capital of Iran. According to reports, in the last few hours, they have come under massive attacks. We'll see, well, what happens in the coming moments. There was also an attack that reportedly affected a nuclear plant. Well, it has already been commented on. It has already been confirmed by the IAEA itself, this UN agency that oversees nuclear safety. Also, well, another image that is surprising is this attack that was reportedly carried out by Israel, showing this gunfire and these airstrikes. According to reports, they allegedly attacked a number of petrochemical plants, a series of petrochemical industries inside Iran. We will be looking at the details of what is happening. Meanwhile, well, this is what the Israeli Defense Forces are sharing. How have you been? Good morning. I hope you're doing well this weekend. We'll be paying attention to the comments. How are you? Says Ibarra, to Pedro, to Fabian, to Adrian, to the whole community that's joining in. Thank you very much for being with us today. Let's look at another image that's also surprising. Well, this is another image that catches your attention. So, it's been this same thing what we were seeing this, but from the ground, right? In other words, the petrochemical plant that was reportedly hit, according to the reports. That's where they work. That's what it's referring to. Imagine, 70% of the gasoline for Iranians comes from this area, which, I insist, was reportedly attacked by the Israeli Defense Forces, according to their own reports. Also, well, part of the attacks that have been happening is that, well, in Tabriz, this was carried out with a ballistic missile, according to reports, and this strike would have happened in that region. Another image that has caught attention is this one. It appears to be over Tehran, and even in broad daylight, explosions could be seen in that area. Also, well, on other topics, these are archive images, right, of Vladimir Putin. But you may have noticed that lately there have been reports of a series of internet blockages. Internet and cell service have been blocked and cancelled. There is only a kind of intranet that connects only to Russian sites. Obviously, people are very upset. Even the Russian propagandists inside Russia are extremely angry about this attitude and the stubbornness of Vladimir Putin's government. Now we know why. According to newly revealed data, this is the lowest level of popularity Vladimir Putin has had in Russia in the last 7 years. According to current reports, Putin's popularity has dropped to its lowest point in the last 7 years inside Russia. That's why the reasons for blocking Telegram, VPNs, and the connectivity problems seem to be that Russians are running out of patience. I mean, they've been patient with what has happened to them, with what they've been living through during this long crisis, but also with the prolonged war that didn't bring the results they expected in days, or at most, weeks, as they said. They've been at war for 4 years and are now mobilizing more personnel for the conflict. This, well, is also part of what we're experiencing in these times, but NASA shows what this movement around Earth will look like. The animation they published shows this. What this movement would be like, let's say, what it would be like, let's say the path they'll take in Earth orbit, then to lunar orbit and back. All of this can take about 10 days. That's what they're going to do right now. It's part of what's being done. We'll be watching to see how it goes. Well, this whole situation obviously won't be very interesting. And well, let's move on to other matters. Let's move on to other important topics as well. Today we'll bring you the details about the nuclear plant and this whole situation, which is also serious. Here's another image of the ongoing attacks. Let's take a look.
Let's see. Come on, let's go.
According to reports, during the night there were multiple attacks against military targets and infrastructure in the city of Abadan in western Iran, mainly. According to reports, this is just a few kilometers from Iraq, as far as we know. Another of the places attacked would be, well, let's go to the map. this nuclear plant that's in the south of Iran, right? So we're going, well, there. There are reports claiming that there are already people injured. This is the Bushehr nuclear plant or power station, according to what they're showing. Here is the image on the map. We're not going to see where the plant is located. This is the Bushehr power plant. Let's get a little closer. This is it, right? The plant.
This one. This time.
This would be the nuclear power plant, according to what the map shows, and it's the one that was reportedly attacked today. Let's go into the details of what the IAEA is reporting. What warning is Donald Trump also issuing? He issues another ultimatum that, well, also shows that things are not going as expected, because there was already an ultimatum that expired today. Today, April 4th, the previous ultimatum expired, but well, they are extending it even further. I'll tell you in a moment what Iran said about it, but forget about this ending anytime soon. According to reports, the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, confirmed that a projectile hit near the nuclear plant, affecting the facilities themselves, but fortunately not the reactor. The attack left at least one person dead, who was a member of the plant's security staff. The explosion damaged the main building due to the shockwave and fragments from the projectile, according to reports. The IAEA stated that they have not detected any radioactive leaks so far, and that, well, this prevented a bigger catastrophe. This would be the fourth attack on the nuclear power plant since the war began on February 28th. Let's remember that the current conflict involves the United States, Israel, and Iran. Nothing else, at least directly. No other countries have joined in yet on either side. I insist, directly or indirectly, so there are many more involved. The director of the IAEA, Rafael Grossi, expressed his deep concern and warned that nuclear power plants should never be military targets. Rafael Grossi has already spoken many times about what is happening in Zaporizhzhia, Ukraine, with Chernobyl as well. Even though it is not an operating plant, there are still risks, and they have also struck in that area. It is estimated that there are still dozens of Russian citizens left, and around 200 could be evacuated soon. In fact, look, right now there are already reports of an evacuation. Let's go into detail because Russia has already issued a warning. There are 198 Russian workers to be exact, according to what Russia itself says. According to what Russia has said. Kremlin, right? Right now, they are already evacuating 198 employees at the Iranian Bushehr plant. Shortly after the projectile hit, well, the decision was made that they had to leave the place. It was an Iranian guard who died. The authorities in Moscow reported on the bombings. As planned, the main phase of evacuation began today, according to what Likachov himself stated. According to the Russian agencies, this movement has already started, right? This evacuation. Let's discuss other topics since Donald Trump had a huge reaction. They have 48 hours, says Donald Trump. Or he says he's going to unleash hell. That's what he commented today. It's not the first time he's used this metaphor. And well, when you use it once, it has an impact. But when you use it like 10 times for different conflicts or for different things, he used it for Venezuela sometimes. He's used it for Iran several times. He's used it against drug trafficking several times. I mean, come on, it's like that whole thing about unleashing hell, well, it's constant, right? It says Donald Trump issued a direct ultimatum to Iran, 48 hours to reach an agreement or they will face massive consequences, saying he will unleash hell. The message was posted on Truth Social, where he reminded people that he had already given a 10-day deadline that ended today. Well, yes, but if the ultimatums aren't met, obviously. Well, they're useless, right? I mean, the message, according to what he says, or his main demand is that Iran completely reopen the Strait of Hormuz and sign an agreement to end the war. The Strait of Hormuz is and remains, well, maybe Iran's main point of leverage and the biggest pressure point the Iranians have. And obviously, they're not going to give it up. And the Iranians, and we'll get into the details in a moment, not just to mention that, and well, within these movements, the Iranians are basically focusing on that. The war turns into a war over the Strait of Hormuz, basically. Let's address the Iranians' warning immediately. Iran warns that the Strait of Hormuz is no longer open to free navigation by anyone. He says it will never again have the status it once had. It's no longer a free passage for navigation. That's over. And not only that, but they also claim that they are the ones who will give permission. Yes to you, no to you. I'll charge you, I won't charge you, and so on and so on. But basically, it comes down to the Strait of Hormuz, at least from the perspective the Iranians have. They believe the Strait of Hormuz is now theirs. They are the ones who are going to control this, according to them. The Strait of Hormuz means controlling 33 kilometers of our area, and you don't need to be there. Being there, obviously, would be a very easy target. That is, if every time someone tries to pass through, they get attacked by air, by sea, or wherever, then no one will want to go through there anymore. How are those who make it through doing it? Well, what they do is, apparently through cryptocurrencies, according to reports, somehow the payment gets there. They charge several $1 million for a ship to pass through. It depends on the ship. They charge by the barrel. If, say, they're carrying 10 barrels, just as an example, then they charge, let's say, $1 per barrel. Besides, these bring 100,000 barrels. 200,000, I mean an exaggerated amount. And then they say, well, this much for each barrel, and they go and check and verify. And not only that, they assign you an Iranian escort. And they put a little boat, one of those armed boats, and they go ahead of the ship, and that's how they cross. According to the same testimonies, that's how they've been crossing this area. It's tremendous, but the one who has control right now is Iran. At least in the Strait of Hormuz, which is what's causing the biggest problem, not just for the United States, but for the world. And that has also caused a lot of annoyance and opposition to the conflict from many of the United States' closest allies, as we already know, right? Now, Iran announced that it plans to charge all ships that want to cross the strait, and that the payment would have to be made in the national currency, the rial. That also caught people's attention. No more crypto, no more dollars. They say that the rial must be used. Well, that's something. Now, getting rials is going to be interesting there. Besides, with the devaluation they have, I imagine it's going to take mountains of money to get those millions that are needed. Control of the strait would be in the direct hands of the Iranian armed forces, and no country would be able to pass without Iran's permission. That's what they say. No country. I mean, forget about Dubai, United Arab Emirates, right? They're right here. Or Oman, right? If they say no, I can still go through because it's my territory. No. They say Iran says no, that Iran says it's theirs, that they are the ones who control it. This means that in practice, Iran could simply decide who to favor and who not to. In recent weeks, Iran has only allowed some ships to pass, and this, well, obviously shows that they are at least trying to have control over the area. Or maybe they already have it. We're talking about Pakistan being able to pass. A French ship, by the way, has already passed. Japanese ships that, according to this, would have paid have also already passed. Apparently also from Iran. There's a report, we'll talk about that in detail in a moment, but India, for example. India has already resumed its purchases from Iran, so what will happen? Iran will be selling oil and the others won't be able to do it? But India, a country that has been quieter, right? It hasn't gotten too involved in the issue. It's asked for calm. It hasn't sent in the military to force passage or anything like that. India, according to reports, is already buying oil from Iran. Let's check the details right now to see what's going on, because this is really interesting, isn't it? Meanwhile, what's happening with these attacks? Israel has reportedly launched an attack, as we just saw. Facilities in several locations. Besides this petrochemical plant, facilities belonging to the Quds Force, Hezbollah, and Islamic Jihad were also attacked. Those attacks reportedly took place today, well, in the last few hours, right? And in recent days, obviously they've been happening in Beirut, in Lebanon. Supposedly, the Quds Force have been detected there. According to reports, among the targets hit was the command center of the Lebanese section of the Quds Force, which is an elite unit, not of Hezbollah. That's the elite unit of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. I mean, they're like the special forces of the United States, but the Iranian version, right? Well, according to reports, in this area, there was an attack inside the Lebanese capital. The statement says that the Israeli forces attacked two headquarters of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad there as well, and an observation post, and a Hezbollah observation post, which was bombed by the same army. This, according to what was reported today, Saturday, by the Israeli military's Arabic language spokesperson, Abiy Andrai. He shared on his channels an evacuation order for the residents of Tyre, Hamadiyeh, Sakuk, Al-Mafudi, and Borg al-Hamali. This is due to the possibility of imminent attacks by the Israeli forces. Also, according to reports, there have been heavy attacks in that area. At the same time, there are also attacks on Israel, according to the reports, right? And this has been happening for days now. Well, the last few days, well, every day, right? We've been seeing this situation. But you can see it in the sky. You can see images that have been circulating where Israel's defense systems are there. They activate, right? Not all of these attacks are intercepted, but a good portion are, according to reports. This was in Haifa, for example. What we're seeing there was in Haifa. There's another one. You couldn't quite see it. There it is. Huge explosion. Well, this is another one of the attacks, but this one was carried out with a cluster bomb. There you can see the submunitions come out. There it is. Look, that's the submunition that's causing problems. The fragments from the cluster missile have been hitting residential areas in central Israel today, Saturday, damaging homes, burning cars. Look, this is a car, and in a moment, we'll see what it looks like. This is a car that was hit by one of these submunition pellets. They really do cause problems. There are different types of submunitions, some that contain chemicals that cause fires when they fall, like these, and others that cause... I don't know if this was a fire or an explosion, but they cause fires, others cause explosions, and others create shrapnel blasts. So, there are different types of explosions, and well, there are even heavier, more powerful versions that we can talk about another day, but obviously this is a really serious issue, right? Let's go into the details of what also happened inside Israel during this attack carried out by Iran. And this is the day when they were supposedly reaching an agreement, right? Which was the deadline, right? But the fact that the attacks continue, the fact that they announced that the Strait, which belongs to them, that they are going to control it, well, obviously, if it wasn't clear before, they don't want to negotiate. Meanwhile, while we go to this report, please give us a like, share, help us out with that. Thank you so much to those who already do it. Greetings to Beatriz, Carlos Martinez, Werner, Marcos, and the whole community. Thank you so much. We'll get to the comments in just a moment, but please help us out by liking and sharing. It's really important for the channel. Let's move on to another point. Well, to this point we'd been waiting on. Which cities in Israel were affected by these cluster bomb attacks? The most affected cities were Ramat Gan, Petah Tikva, and Bnei Brak. This is in the urban heart of Israel. The attack left at least 6 people with minor injuries, mainly from glass and explosions. Cluster bombs are especially dangerous because they disperse multiple small explosives over wide areas. Israel described the attack as a possible war crime due to the use of this type of weaponry in civilian areas. It's an issue that I insist everyone is using. What has actually been documented? It has been used in Gaza, Ukraine has used it, and Russia has used it. come on, these are countries that haven't wanted to sign, and among them, the United States as well. By the way, they haven't wanted to sign this resolution about the bombs, where they voted not to use that kind of weapons, and for the commitment, cluster bombs. Well, like 100 and something countries, the vast majority don't use or don't agree with using this kind of weapons. But well, the countries that are most in conflict are always the ones that haven't signed this, right? Meanwhile, emergency teams have launched massive operations to look for the injured, to search for possible victims, and to control the fires caused by these kinds of problems. Israel responded immediately by attacking Iranian facilities, including a petrochemical plant, refineries, and industrial plants that are close to nuclear facilities, as we've already seen, right? That was the response or counterattack, whatever you call it. The thing is, that's how things are happening. Attacks and counterattacks, attacks and counterattacks. Yesterday, they were saying in Israel that more than 70% of the steel plants in Iran have already been destroyed. It could be that Iran ends up without any steel plants and has to depend on China, Russia, or some other country to sell them steel. In the middle of a conflict and in situations where they will have to rebuild many of the oil facilities. Well, yes, it's also a complicated issue for the future, but not an immediate issue right now. Another striking image is this one I mentioned yesterday. Well, today there is more information about this attack. This was a CH-47 Chinook helicopter that was affected, according to what is now confirmed at the Kuwait airfield, according to the latest report. The details of how it happened have been changing a bit, but now they say, and supposedly, the information that is now circulating on this topic, the media says that the attack was carried out with a Shahed, that is, with one of these suicide drones, which would have hit the helicopter. This happened inside a base over there at an airfield in Kuwait, according to reports. Well, that's also part of what's happening now. Also, among other things that are happening, check this out. Impressive, this kind of disintegration in the atmosphere. This happened in Argentina, according to reports. Something fell from the sky. It could be space debris. Well, we'll see. For now, there's no information that this has caused any damage, but obviously this has been surprising, hasn't it? It's, well, spectacular, but also, well, you know, these parts, these pieces from some satellite or some meteor or whatever it is. In the end, it can also cause problems, it can cause damage, and lately, that's the kind of thing we've been seeing, right? Well, that's how things are in this matter. By the way, big news about what Marco Rubio said today on his official account. Well, this is his official account on Twitter, right? This is Secretary Marco Rubio, and well, basically, do you remember Soleimani? Qasem Soleimani? Qasem, this figure, this person. I greet you, how do you say Qasem Soleimani? Soleimani? He orders Soleimani to be eliminated. Qasem Soleimani was the second most important military leader of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard at that time. He's still remembered to this day and was well loved. People said he would be the next Iranian leader. He was obviously a key figure, but he had also been instrumental in attacking American soldiers inside Iraq. So, if we look at the map and go to this border between Iraq and Iran, there are the Iranians, and over here on this side is Iraq, right? So, in an area of the border very close to Iran, but still on the Iraqi side, Qasem Soleimani was there at the time and they fired a precision missile at him. Está his car. Look how destroyed it was. It's there, like a monument in Iraq. There are some YouTubers who have gone to visit the place. Why is it a monument? Because every year the death of that individual is remembered there, but you can see from the images that came out at the time, back then, how the attack was very precise. I mean, nothing else was destroyed nearby, but the car was completely destroyed. Qasem Soleimani was in that car. From that point on, the relationship between the United States and Iran plummeted tremendously and still hasn't even gone back to negotiating over the nuclear issue since then. Well, so what does Marco Rubio announce? Marco Rubio confirms that Qasim's relatives live in the United States and living in luxury too. I mean, relatives, right? We're talking about his daughter. Just imagine, I mean, that country eliminates your father and you go live there. And they let her live there. According to reports, Hamedi Soleimani Afjar and his daughter are residents, they're nieces, right? Sorry, not his daughter, his niece. He says she was supposed to live there. According to reports, she has been a public defender of the Iranian regime. But at the same time, she goes to live in the United States. He says that's totally inconsistent, right? But ICE went after them. Look at that. This week, he says, I revoked the legal status of Hamedi Soleimani Afjar and her daughter, who are in ICE custody awaiting their expulsion from the United States. They are going to be, according to what they say, out of the United States, two relatives then who are key in this matter. And well, above all, they are key because he says they are from the Soleimani family. So what were they doing in that country? It's something, well, at the very least strange, isn't it? And, well, it's also like the idea that those people or figures who have entered the United States and that, well, they support the Iranian regime and they are foreigners and they are from Iran. Above all, obviously, they will have or could have legal problems, right? To be, well, in that country, right? Strange things happen. Also, another thing that keeps causing problems. What's happening in California? The fires keep being reported. Thousands have already been evacuated in California, according to reports. The rapid spread of active fires in the south of the United States, in California, well, has thousands of people under evacuation orders. If you live in California, make sure you stay informed about how things are going. If you live in a nearby area, but you're not in danger from the fire, also make sure to check the air quality carefully. Of the air in your area, just to take the necessary precautions, right? The rapid spread of the fires in California, evacuations of people. So, in a nearby area, a complicated situation in California because of the fires, specifically the Spring Fire and Crown Fire. Authorities confirm that around 12,900 people have already been evacuated and another 9,850 people are also reportedly already evacuated. They are going to tell them to evacuate immediately. They say they're already on alert for a possible immediate evacuation. 12,900 already, 9,850 that are fires are still being reported. Fire se triplicó su tamaño nada más en las últimas horas, alcanzando thousands of people. Well, you lived through the fire? Check the rating carefully. Give it to the firefighters. Extremely low humidity, around 10%, and dry vegetation have created perfect conditions for the fire to spread. Fast-moving fire, Crown Fire, also threatening structures and homes. There are two fires, as I said, Spring Fire and Crown Fire. Crown Fire, they confirm. Well, it's also already affecting homes, forcing evacuation orders in several areas. Containment is still low. The rapid spread and active hotspots in the south keep evacuations in place. In Crown Fire, that one is considered more controlled, at 25%. So, if you live in the affected area, there are helicopters, fire trucks, and bulldozers to stop the fire's advance, and the Moreno Valley College campus also had to close. Para evacuar por la mala calidad de aire. No había... no era... Which... well, in an area from last year where, well, there were 200,000 evacuees, do you remember? Are you in danger? Meteorólogos advierten que el riesgo seguirá. From Saturday and Sunday, because of the conditions, well, they're pretty dry. The cause of the fire is under investigation. It's not known where it started, who caused it, or if it was, well, something related to the fire. Check it. Air quality rating, well, it's terrible. And, well, it's also an important part of what's happening in that region of the world. Let's move on to other matters, other important topics as well. How have Marcela, Carlos Martinez, and Margot been doing? We're going to keep updating. There are several news stories right now that are developing and that I'd like to tell you about later on. So let's keep talking. Go ahead and get your coffee ready. If you haven't done it yet, there's still a little more information left, right? And at the end, we'll move on to the conversation, the chat, right? Let's move on then to other important matters as well. All right, let's talk about what's happening in India regarding Iran, because this could show the other side of the coin of what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. What Iran is saying, as I mentioned to you a moment ago, is that from now on, regardless of whether the war ends or whatever happens, the Strait of Hormuz will belong to them. They are going to control it according to what they say, and well, they are going to charge for it. They are going to charge a fee or a toll or whatever we want to call it, but they are going to charge for passing through there. That's how it is. And they've even made changes to the laws so that this is seen that way. I was telling you that India, I mentioned a few days ago that in India, they only have a few days of reserves left. They were about to run completely out of oil, to the point where there was panic buying, there were attacks, there were even some shootouts. I mean, things had gotten complicated in different parts of India, in Indonesia, in Bangladesh, right? From various countries in the region, including Bangladesh. These countries depend almost entirely, 80 or 90%, on the oil that comes through here. Imagine for a moment that a country, the most populated country in the world, 1.4 billion people, suddenly runs out of fuel. What would you do? And not just without fuel, which might still be manageable, but without gas. Without gas and without fuel, 1.4 billion people, if just 1% goes crazy, if even 0.001% goes crazy and gets really intense, it would cause chaos, right? I mean, it would create problems. Obviously, India wants to avoid this at all costs, and they're going to make sure of it. I mean, at all costs, there will be oil. There has to be oil, you know, as they say, too big to fail, right? I mean, so big it can't collapse. Because the bigger the fall, the worse it is. India confirms that they have already made the decision and that they are resuming the purchase of Iranian oil. For the first time, let's see, how long has it been? In 7 years, I mean, 2019 is when they stopped buying oil. It's been nearly 7 years. And, well, they go back to buying oil. So, well, this conflict has already brought a new customer to the Iranians. The main reason is that, well, there's a global supply crisis caused by the war and the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. India is the third largest oil importer in the world. I mean, just like that, right? I mean, a person who exports, well, actually, who buys oil, obviously that's huge. According to reports, it's the third largest oil importer. I mean, the third that imports the most. In other words, that buys the most oil in the world. Obviously, this is huge. Either it's a giant when it comes to buying it, or it's someone who consumes too much oil. The United States temporarily lifted sanctions on Iranian oil. I mean, that's something that also draws attention. The United States has to lift the sanctions. That's what the countries are saying. Either you lift them, or I'm going to have to bypass the sanctions because I'm not getting oil, and I absolutely need oil. India has already received its first 44,000 tons of liquefied petroleum gas from Iran at the port of Mangalore, just like that. They've already received a lot. The Strait of Hormuz is key because a large part of Asia gets about 89% of its oil through it. The oil and gas they receive for that area comes originally from that whole region. Not just from Iran, but in general from the whole area, from all of the Middle East and the entire Persian Gulf and this whole region. So it depends completely. So, at least for now, that's a move that really has surprised people. Another thing that also draws attention is that companies from China are involved. They are selling intelligence about the war involving Iran, and this is directly affecting the United States military. Chinese companies are literally trading in military intelligence. This includes movements of aircraft carriers, military bases, aircraft, and defense systems in the Middle East. The companies combine satellite images, flight tracking, maritime data, and AI analysis to generate military intelligence. Some of the companies have ties to the Chinese People's Liberation Army, although officially they remain supposedly private. They also identified US air bases and the number of deployed ships before the attacks involving Iran. Another company, Jinan Technology, claimed that they had even detected communications from B-2 and B-52 stealth bombers. So just imagine how serious that would be. It's true, those who are listening to the communications of the bombers, US officials say they doubt that China has full access to secret communications, but they consider it a real and growing threat. The problem, the biggest problem, more than anything else, is that the intelligence doesn't come from traditional espionage. The problem is, okay, they have their intelligence, they have their spies and whatever else, okay. But this is coming from supposedly private companies that are providing this service. United States lawmakers warn that China could be indirectly helping enemies of the United States by sharing this information. And that, well, even though officially they are not operating for this war or for the war between Ukraine and Russia, in reality they are operating in a different way. And besides, they're turning it into a good business, right? Because this is something they charge for. This isn't free, right? And they charge directly, don't they? I mean, that's also something that, well, stands out. All right. Let's move on to other matters. Let's move on to other topics. Look, Ukraine is sending a message, one of those that NATO doesn't like to hear, but, well, someone had to say it. Ukraine has issued a warning to NATO. NATO is adapting, as an alliance, as an organization, they're adapting too slowly to modern warfare, especially to what's happening in the conflict with Russia. Ukrainian soldiers who have trained with NATO say that many of the tactics taught by the Allies are outdated. Much of the training that NATO wants to offer, or continues to offer its own soldiers, is based on the war in Afghanistan. And Ukraine says, hey, that's already over. Modern warfare is very different from what happened in Afghanistan. Leave that behind and adapt to the way war is fought now. He says one of the biggest mistakes detected by Ukraine is that NATO trains troops as if they could use aircraft freely. Something that Ukraine says is almost impossible because of air defenses and drones. You can't just come in with planes and parachute in like that anymore. And that's because they send a swarm of drones and take down the plane, right? It's just not possible anymore. I have to repeat this part because it's just unmissable. It says one of the biggest mistakes detected in NATO is that they train troops as if they could use planes freely. This doesn't happen anymore, not even for attacks or for, parachute drops. It's much more complicated. Well, they've already been experiencing it. Even the most advanced planes they have in the United States. There have already been some problems, and others that are older, like the A-10, which is a much older plane than... But even though they have the technology and everything to detect where the drones are, it's been a tremendous risk. The massive use of drones has completely changed warfare, but many NATO armies still view their use with skepticism. Ukraine claims that the modern battlefield is dominated by drones and constant surveillance, electronic warfare, and nighttime attacks. In military exercises in 2025, Ukrainian units defeated 2 NATO battalions using drone tactics, demonstrating a tactical gap. This was obviously in a military exercise. In military exercises in 2025, Ukrainian units beat 2 NATO battalions using drone tactics. And they showed that Ukraine was right. Or let's say the NATO tactic is already obsolete. The NATO forces, I mean, I'm not saying they don't have strengths, but they have to adapt. It's like having an outdated program, you just have to adapt. Because, I mean, the program can be robust, it can have whatever you want, the potential, but without adaptation, well, it's down. NATO forces advance in large formations without enough protection against drones. I mean, they move in big groups, but they're not prepared for mines. They're not prepared against drones. And that, Ukraine says, is devastating. Ukraine also impressed NATO with the Delta system, which allows them to see the battlefield in real time and share information between units. A system that has been very useful for them on the front lines of the conflict. NATO acknowledges that it is learning from Ukraine and has even created a training and analysis center in Poland to study this war. Speaking of Poland as a separate point, but what has also been surprising and maybe hasn't been talked about enough is what happened a few days ago. I mentioned it to you here, but after thinking about it, you say, wait, what's going on here? There's this conflict, right? It's intense. United States, Israel, Iran, all of that, everything you can imagine. And then there's Europe, and then there's the Ukraine-Russia conflict, right? But there's a country that has a very close relationship in recent years, a really close relationship with the United States, and that's Poland. Poland is a country that invests a lot in NATO. I mean, it's a country that buys a lot of weapons, that has invested a lot, because Poland doesn't want to repeat the mistakes of the past, the mistakes of the great wars that have happened before, in which Poland ended up in a bad position. They've been invaded, it's kind of in the middle of everything, so Poland has prepared a lot for the prospect of conflict. It has highly trained troops, it has a modern army, it's close to Ukraine, it's right next to Ukraine, so they see it as very close, right? The United States asked them for Patriots, asked them to send some of the weapons they have to the United States for the war with Iran. They did the same with South Korea, and South Korea said, sure, go ahead and take them, right? You need them urgently, of course. Take them. We're partners, so you can take them. And Poland said no. I mean, that refusal from Poland, they said, no. I have things to defend here. I'm not going to lend weapons. Not even to your partner, not even to the very one who sells you those weapons, would you lend them, right? Poland said no, period. What topic? Well, that would also show what it does. Poland these days, right? Poland, well, it's not the same anymore. I mean, come on. Poland is probably much more prepared now than other European powers, right? I'm not saying all of them, but they do have a different kind of preparation, right? They're prepared for conflict in a much more intense way, right? They don't have nuclear weapons like France, that's true, but aside from that, they're pretty strong. Later, if you want, we can compare them, right? Between Germany, France, Spain, Greece, Italy, right? And Poland, right? And the United Kingdom too, right? The United Kingdom is obviously still a power, but they've also neglected that part for a while now, right? The military part. Let's move on to other important matters. I have several news topics and scientific subjects to discuss with you. We'll return shortly to the situation in Iran. Let's check for other updates. But anyway, several details. According to scientists, they've been researching this. Look, let's see if we can put it up. Here's the image. It's an image, well, I mean, to illustrate, it's not an exact image, right? But at least it helps. You can understand. Do you remember these grasses that you sometimes see in the ocean, in the sea, right? If you give me an image, I could show you what this kind of seagrass looks like, this kind of grass, right? Scientists confirmed this on Catalina Island in California. These grasses could be changing what was known about marine ecological restoration. The scientists managed to make seagrass meadows they restored surpass the natural ones in just 2 years. Researchers from the University of California managed to restore seagrasses in the open sea, something that had not been achieved before. The most impressive thing is that in just 2 years, the restored meadows surpassed the natural ones in biodiversity. I mean, meadows that grew on their own, right? This overturns the previous idea that restored nature takes decades to match the original. They say that if humans help restore nature, nature also adapts very quickly. Seagrasses would be key because they capture and store CO2 on the seafloor, acting as large carbon sinks. In addition, they create natural shelters for fish, crustaceans, and endangered species. In fact, during this experiment, an endangered sea turtle appeared in the restored area. That surprised the scientists. That was fast. There were already endangered species living in the area. The project started in 2022, and in just 1 year, it was already functioning as a complete natural ecosystem. Scientists think this model could be used worldwide to help address biodiversity loss, an issue that is rarely discussed. Many discuss pollutants and climate effects, but biodiversity is still being lost. What we've talked about here so many times about how in the past, for those who are a bit older, when you used to drive on the highway, the windshield would get covered with mosquitoes and insects. And for some years now, you go on the road with your car clean, you come back and your car is just as clean. Or you won't have any problem with insects. It's extremely rare for that to happen now. Before, it was normal. The whole front part was covered with insects. The entire windshield was also full of insects. The windshield. Because, well, there were a lot, not just one thing, or well, there are also some theories about it, right? There are several theories. There's another issue drawing attention in the science news today. There's a myth about dark chocolate that they always sell you the idea that it's very healthy, that, well, look, let's say it has antioxidants, it has 1,000 things, right? You're not going to like this. Many people won't like this, but that's their problem. They claim that dark chocolate has cocoa solids of about 50 to 90%, while milk chocolate usually has about 20 to 30%. But studies indicate that cocoa flavonoids help cardiovascular health, that they do help blood flow, and that they slightly lower blood pressure. However, he says these studies show that those are concentrated cocoa extracts. They are the ones that have the flavonoids. Commercial chocolate, even if it says it has 90% or whatever, doesn't provide the flavonoids. Those stay inside the cacao, inside, let's say, the material it's made from. The problem is that, for example, it's like this. Commercial dark chocolate usually has about 50% sugar. If the first ingredient on the label is sugar and not cocoa, then the chocolate stops being healthy. Experts recommend choosing chocolates that have at least 70% cocoa listed among the ingredients. And that way you make sure you'll get the benefits. Otherwise, he says, the problem caused by the sugar greatly reduces the benefits you get from cocoa. So, well, I think it's also a bit of common sense in that regard, but, well, having some once in a while, I don't think that's bad either. Now, another topic that has also been talked about a lot throughout 2026 is that there's a new theory that's going to change everything about Alzheimer's, and, well, this could be very good for a lot of people. People who have relatives with Alzheimer's, who know they have a chance of also getting Alzheimer's and things like that, or who already have family members with this problem. Well, there's a new theory that will unify our understanding of how this problem begins in the brain. And for decades, there have been many different theories. Now, apparently, they're finding a theory that will unify all those theories. It's not that they're wrong, but rather that they're identifying how Alzheimer's begins. And with this, they say it's going to completely change everything, all the problems that have existed with this issue. He says that for many decades, scientists have debated what really causes the disease. Whether it's a food, whether it's a protein, whether it's something else, right? They report that beta amyloid forms plaques in the brain that can appear up to 20 years before symptoms. That tau protein forms tangles or filaments inside the neurons, and these are related to cognitive decline. The new study suggests both are linked to the disease's origin, not just one or the other. Both beta amyloid and tau protein, which are like the two main ones, together they are what caused the problem. This causes the microtubules in neurons to become destabilized and fail, and the neurons eventually die, which would explain Alzheimer's. They claim the discovery will resolve the scientific debate about which appears first, tau or beta. In addition, it also explains why many treatments that eliminate beta amyloid have not managed to cure Alzheimer's. Scientists believe that the main problem could be the damage to the microtubules, not just the plaques or tangles. They claim this will open up new treatments focused on stabilizing the microtubules. They even mention other chemicals they are researching that could have protective effects on those tubules and thus improve the situation or prevent it from getting worse. And it represents 70% of dementia cases worldwide. So, if a cure is achieved, if it can be reversed, or if progress is made, at least completely stopping it would benefit a large part of the world's population. That would also be important. Another issue, now moving on to other geopolitical topics, but also scientific topics. Reports say a new approach is changing everything previously understood. When it comes to healthy eating, it says that for years, people have talked about healthy eating and everything is fine up to that point, right? But it is said that there is a disorder that develops when they then become obsessed with being healthy, known as orthorexia, where a person fixates on eating perfectly and healthily, but so much that it worsens their life, it worsens their social relationships. They start avoiding going out with people because they say, no, look, they only eat like that there, or they only eat grilled food there. And then their world starts to close in and they say, well, yes, I'm alone, but I eat well. You're there with your little lettuce or whatever. Well, they say that this concept has to change. The concept should focus on what they call intuitive eating, that is, creating or inventing in some way a method. To help you understand what's healthy, and by learning how to listen to your body, you will solve many problems. Or, hey, you know that when I eat this, I feel a little heavier. When I eat this, I feel a little lighter. I feel more energetic. I sleep better. I sleep worse. But anyway, it's a whole topic that they call intuitive eating, which means listening to your body to know when to eat what. For example, when it's better to eat more protein, when it's better to eat more carbohydrates, or if it's a very active day with a lot of movement, with a lot of exercise, or if your job is like that, then you need a little more carbohydrates or you need a little more protein. I mean, that will depend on your lifestyle. It says to eat when you're truly hungry. Stop when you're satisfied. For example, this is something the Japanese do a lot. They eat until they have, let's say, still about 20% hungry, so to speak. That's when they stop. No, they don't wait until they're full, which might explain why Japan. Well, they tend to be very slim even though they eat everything. They eat a lot of bread and rice and many things that a lot of people usually avoid. But that's just them. Well, not everyone, right? There are also some people there, not just the sumo wrestlers, right? And the problem is that we live surrounded by cheap food, ultra-processed food, large portions, and advertising that makes it very hard to listen to our bodies. There's too much noise around that doesn't let us listen to our bodies. People with fewer resources have a harder time eating healthy because of the price, the time, and the access to food, which is another reality as well. It's not very cheap. You go to the small supermarkets, not those 24-hour stores that have everything, right? And what do you mostly find there? Well, junk food, right? And it's really cheap, it'll fill you up, and on top of that, it tastes good, right? Well, that's where people go, right? The problem is that, well, experts say they recommend, the problem is this, but they recommend 3 things. Recognize the signs of hunger and fullness. Stop seeing foods as forbidden. Foods aren't forbidden, but eat everything. Just listen to your body, and it also says to eat more with others. They say that's also beneficial, and the conclusion is clear. Eating healthy doesn't mean living in fear of food, but having a balanced, flexible, and guilt-free relationship with it. But well, at least that's a different take from what's usually said about this topic. Let's move on to other important matters. What's happening in Afghanistan is impressive, and I'm not talking about the war over there, by the way, but about what's happening with the rains. Just look at how harsh it is. Hey, how has Afghanistan been affected? I mean, in Afghanistan, they already had an earthquake, which we mentioned yesterday, with 8 people dead, more injured, and so on. Right? There was an earthquake in the northern area between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Some of the deceased are apparently from one side, others from the other. Also, the information there, wow. I mean, it's extremely difficult to confirm, but at least that's what has been confirmed so far. But besides this, they've also been hit really hard by the rain. They've been hit really hard. Let's see if they're still having trouble with the rain. Let's see if we can use the satellite to find out where this rain system moved. But look, let's see if we can see anything. Oh, look, the rain isn't there anymore, but maybe, look, here it is. 24 hours ago, it did manage to pick this up. This is what caused the problem. Do you know the death toll? It's a desert country. It's a country that's not used to storms like this. And there are consequences, right? So, what we're seeing here has already resulted in 60 people losing their lives. I mean, 60 people died and 116 were injured, according to reports, in that part of the world. The AFP agency reports that houses have been damaged amid the flooding on the outskirts of Pulikumri in Baglan province. In different parts of northern and eastern Afghanistan, at least 61 people have lost their lives and 119 have been injured due to the torrential rains that have hit over the past week. This emergency coincides with an earthquake that was recorded today, Friday, right? Sorry, today, right? It was today, wasn't it? I mean, for them it was already today. Well, we would have to check, but it seemed to me on the USGS that it was between yesterday and today. I mean, for us it was Friday, but maybe for them it was already Saturday. You know, yes, for them it really was Saturday. Yes, that's right. For them, it was already 4. Exactly. The main spokesperson for the Taliban government, Zabihullah Mujahid, specified that 4 other people are still missing while search and rescue operations continue in the affected areas, according to what they have said. Another issue that also draws attention. Donald Trump is starting. Too late, I would say, but he is starting to try to communicate with Generation Z. Does he no longer want to make America great again? They want to make it cool again. No, well, it's too late, man. I mean, Washington says, the President of the United States says they're looking to refresh the public administration workforce. An initiative aimed, he says, at attracting younger professionals from Generation Z because they want to make their government cool again. I mean, they don't want to reuse that phrase, but with cool, not the word cool. However, this shift coincides with a drop in popularity for the Republican among the so-called Zoomers and Centennials, that is, Generation Z. Either yes or no. Basically, it's the worst moment. It's the time when they have the least support from those generations. But well, they're trying to recover a little bit there. According to the director of the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, Scott Copper, only 7% of federal employees are under 30 years old. So almost all of them are 30 years old or older. Now they want to focus on younger groups and make the government, they say, cooler. There's a generational gap where, well, most of the people running the government are people 30 and up, and, well, it's also necessary to have young people involved. No, the candidates will be selected based on demonstrated talent, not on where or if they went to university or how many years they've been in the position, but rather on whether they have verifiable talent. Well, part of what they're doing is called the Making Government Cool Again movement. That the government becomes cool again. That's the approach they have there. Way too late, I would say, but anyway, that's part of what's happening. They also say that cybercrime is evolving, and well, they're reporting not only cyber attacks, but attacks that are becoming increasingly hard to detect. No, not just tougher, but also, right? But they're becoming virtually undetectable. That's the serious problem right now with cyber attacks. They're getting harder and harder to track. Cybercrime is in a new era. It's driven by AIs. Artificial intelligence is changing the world of cybercrime globally, allowing for faster, cheaper, and much harder to track attacks. The report from the cybersecurity company Kaspersky warns that hackers have used AIs to create malware, to create these classic emails. The company report was very easy to detect. Well, I mean, cybersecurity warns they have errors when writing, like I'm the son of the Prince of Nigeria, right? The classic old one. But they kept evolving, and they were always messages that somehow ask you to click on a link or ask you for money or whatever, but always in ways that are very, very easy to spot, right? Now, phishing is much more powerful because, well, maybe they're sending mass messages from Korea or from Nigeria or from whatever country. But now they're written much more accurately and precisely. Now they send them with these databases they find on the internet, and they send them to people using their real names. Or at least with the names they use on their accounts, which is why it's also good to have certain emails with different names that aren't your real one, so your full name doesn't show up and it doesn't get so confusing, right? So yes, you have to be careful with that. But anyway, the thing is that experts say it used to be very easy to identify hackers by their digital signature. Language errors, programming styles, or repeated patterns. They would say, this is a pattern used by hackers from Nigeria, or this is a pattern used by hackers from Korea. Now that's no longer the case. Those errors have largely disappeared thanks to AIs since they correct them. Generative AI erases that trace. That's because the code created by AI is clean, uniform, and error-free, so you can't trace it back to those responsible. This means that attributing a cyber attack to a specific group will become increasingly difficult, which complicates international defense. There's a new concept called agentic AI, allowing the creation of attack tools in days when it used to take months. One example is VoidLink, malware created almost entirely with artificial intelligence that can carry out attacks. Cloud systems adapting with modules like rootkits or implants. Well, that also draws attention. And another case would be Slopoly, a tool used for mass extortion that allows attackers to maintain access to servers for days without being detected. Experts warn that this doesn't necessarily make attacks more sophisticated, but it does make them much more frequent and massive. In that sense, well, there's the Lazarus Group, right? We've mentioned several times here that they used AI-generated images to steal cryptocurrencies, showing that this trend has been going on for years, but now it's growing, right? That's another one too. Well, things like what happened to this lady who was supposedly getting messages from Brad Pitt, and on top of that, he was asking her for money and she was giving him money. And he used these images to show that he was supposedly Brad Pitt, right? And they took a lot of money from the lady. Well, that's how things are on this topic. Let's move on to other topics, to other important matters as well. There are other matters that draw attention. There are these two citizens. Let's see if we can show them on screen. Yes? Yes? These two citizens, let's see if you can see them. There it is. That's a citizen, a Chinese citizen, right? Those citizens would be siblings, as I understand it, right? Let's try placing the two dots there. Go ahead. There you go. There you go. There it is. Well, these two people, according to the reports, were even spying. They would be the ones behind an attempted attack at the MacDill base. They're detained, right? Let's go into the details of what is known about this case, which, well, shows how, well, we're going to be seeing more activity from these agents, apparently Chinese agents, right? Who do they work for? If they're from the government, what's going on there, or which group they belong to? Let's get into the details. First, greetings to the community. Adriana, how have you been? Wendy, how are you? Wendy Arias, a big shout out to New York. To Jose Zarate, all the way to California. To Perla, all the way to Argentina. Eliseo, how have you been? And Talo, thank you so much for that super chat. I really appreciate it. And, well, to the whole community that's here live, thank you so much for supporting us. 2 American citizens of Chinese origin are currently being investigated for attempting to detonate a device. They tried to detonate an explosive device at MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa. It's a strategic U.S. military facility, and they wanted to set off an explosive. This topic really grabs your attention, doesn't it? What exactly are we discussing? Thank you so much for that super chat again. I mean, the main suspect is the individual, right? The one on the left, right? His name is Alan Shen, right? According to reports, the accused Alan Shen allegedly placed this explosive at the base on March 10, 2026, and then he fled to China. His sister, Anna Marie Shen, 27 years old, was arrested and charged as an accomplice for tampering with evidence. So he does escape from what I see. She is the one who is detained. They claim that they tampered with the evidence, destroyed the evidence, and helped him escape. Yes? Now here's what catches my attention. If this is true, I mean, if the age is correct, if I have it wrong here. But the report here says she's 20 years old. Honestly, she looks much older to me. I mean, there's no way I see her as 20 years old, or maybe 20 years old in the United States. Could it be 20 years old? This person isn't 20 years old, right? She says she's 27 years old. Honestly, well, they look pretty worn out. So why is that? She doesn't look 27. She doesn't look younger than 20. I mean, she'd look about the same. It would show that not all Asians look young, like they always say, right? The thing is, well, according to the federal indictment, the bomb was classified as a defective device, which prevented a bigger tragedy. The explosive went undetected for 6 days until a soldier found it, which also led to strong criticism of the base's security protocols. The investigation found Anne-Marie used ChatGPT to look up how to get a Chinese visa, how to transfer a vehicle, and that way they could track a car linked to the attack. The authorities found explosive components and remains of material from a Mercedes-Benz that was allegedly used in the attempted attack. Anne-Marie Sheng faces 30 years in prison and is found guilty, in addition to fines and confiscations. The case has shown how, well, these 2 people, children of undocumented immigrants, it has reopened the debate about birthright citizenship in the United States. Both of them were indeed born in the United States, but they are serving, well, as. Well, I don't know if it says China, right? The brother is still on the run, and his whereabouts are simply unknown, which keeps the case as a national security priority. This case has already become a political, immigration, and national security issue that could influence new citizenship laws in the United States. It's also a topic that's, well, quite interesting. Now let's also move on to other important matters. Notice that the United States is reportedly currently planning what is supposed to be the alleged attack in the next 48 hours. So, that would be Sunday, Monday, right? So the attack is on Monday, right? Supposedly. That would be the next move, right? Let's get into the details. A moment ago, we saw how they have been launching attacks at different points. From Lebanon and also from Iran, right? Well, now we have the details of how many attacks there were. The army reported that in the last 48 hours, they have attacked 340 targets in Iran alone. I mean, that's a really significant number, isn't it? According to what the army reports, they provided details about the simultaneous attacks in Tehran and also in Lebanon. I mean, in both places. Okay, that was in both. So, they're definitely reporting the military escalation in the Middle East only with the attacks that have been carried out by Israel. There are 340 between the two, between Lebanon and Iran. 140 targets on Lebanese soil and 200 in Iranian territories. These were among the attacks carried out on Friday. And from today, Saturday, in these 2 days, let's say 340 targets. That's just by the Israel Defense Forces. I mean, by the IDF. That's what's being reported right now. It's not good. Obviously, it's terrible, right? The kind of operations they're carrying out. All right, let's move on to other important matters as well. Well, reports are coming in right now that the Houthis have claimed responsibility for a ballistic missile attack. This was against Israel. You know, the Houthis are in Yemen. They are reporting that a ballistic missile was launched from Yemen towards Israel. A few minutes ago, according to reports, it was already announced that the Houthi rebels, this radical group, have claimed today, Saturday, their first attack. It was with a cluster ballistic missile. Attention, a ballistic missile with a cluster warhead was used against, according to them, vital infrastructure. This would be the fifth military operation since they entered the war. So it's the first missile with a cluster warhead, but it's the fifth attack by the Houthis against Israel in this conflict alone. I mean, in this war, in the context of Iran, let's say, right? The Houthis have had ongoing problems there for some time. Israel, the military spokesperson for the Houthis, Yahya Sari, stated this in a televised statement that their units used a ballistic missile with a cluster warhead and several drones against Tel Aviv airport and vital targets, he says, in Israel. The operation was carried out jointly with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, the Iranian Army, and the Lebanese Shia group, which is Hezbollah. That's what the statement says. Well, things keep getting intense as well. How are you, Carlos Martinez? Maria, how have you been? Perla. Hello. Well, let's get to it. Let's go to the comments. Let's go then. How have you been? How's it going for you? Thank you so much for joining me, for being here for a while, for being here with the community. Obviously, well, there's been a bit of everything, right? That's it. No. This weekend, it was expected that things could escalate. These extra 48 hours are basically the final warning from the United States. It's clear that the Iranians don't want to negotiate. It's not clear what calculation they're making. But I suppose it's a calculation that, at least for them, is working. Well, maybe the fact that they have control over the Strait of Hormuz makes them think they can sustain the conflict for a longer time. Maybe they know that the pressure is on the United States, seeing that the polls are dropping sharply for Trump. Maybe that creates an effect for them, for their strategy, that makes them feel like they're doing well in that sense. We'll see. In the meantime, greetings. Carlos says, it's not 5 hours from Miami either if you take Avenue 27. Wow, Carlos, how are you? Good afternoon, Maria Elena. Greetings to Tehuacan, Puebla. Greetings also to Plas Marino. How have you been? Greetings. Trump said that Cuba was next and nothing has happened. That's right, Plas Marino. Nothing has happened, at least for now. No, nothing seems clear in that regard. You say you're in favor of birthright citizenship and implementing residence visas. It says revocable for inappropriate behavior. Many problems in the world could have been avoided, says Perla, says Fidel. How have you been, Fidel? Also greetings. Thank you very much for your comment. Francisco Arce says drugs have an effect. Well, that could be. It's just that if you have a bad, really bad life, well, it can make you look really bad, etc. Or maybe some illness, etc. But the city topic interests me, and someone says, let's have lunch. Let's leave Pepe for now, says Carlos Martinez. Where are you having lunch, man? Where to? Okay. Have lunch. You guys call it, let's see. In the morning, it's like breakfast. But here, we also call it lunch. I mean, he's having lunch. I mean, it's in the morning, and then at noon, he's having lunch, right? And then dinner at night. Sorry, dinner, right? And I don't know anymore. So it's lunch, it's meal, and it's breakfast. Sorry. And it's dinner, right? I mean, it's lunch, breakfast, meal. It just has a name that was given to it, and then at dinner, right? I mean, but in the morning, we also call it lunch or breakfast. But I've seen that in other places, they call the midday meal lunch, right? Whereas here, if you're having lunch, you'd ask why. If it's 2 p.m., it's too late for lunch, you're just having a meal. Well, those are things about the language that are kind of strange. He says, I'm not against or in favor of Trump, but in Cuba, he wouldn't find any resistance, says Carlos. Well, he probably wouldn't find much resistance. That's a good point there, Carlos. Adriana says, how are you? Adriana gave a huge shout out. Sandra, how are you? Greetings all the way to California. Hello there. He says, in Chile, lunch is at noon. I mean, the main meal exactly. That's what I'm telling you. Look, in some places, lunch is like that, right? And maybe that's the correct way, right? But at least here in the Northeast, it's very common to have lunch in the morning. It's kind of a curious thing. And greetings, Adriana. How has high school been? Very good. There are 2 high schools there. The term liceo isn't common. I've never known any high schools here besides yours. I've never known a high school here in the community. Greetings to the high schools of the Dominican Republic, and greetings also to the high school all the way over there, all the way to Spain. Hello, how have you been? How are you all doing? Misquito, how have you been? Greetings to Nicaragua. Very good. Greetings. Greetings. Saturday is at my house, 0 sodas. And when we go to parties, it's the same for everyone. I mean, no sodas, no beer, and no wine. Ah, that's not true. Sometimes Jose says, no, but beer is okay. He says for Trump to regain popularity, he must start by completely and quickly removing the dictators from Venezuela and not just try to do business. That's a good point there. Because that was something that was apparently going to bring him popularity in certain sectors, and it kind of ended up halfway. The move didn't feel complete. There, and the less junk food, the better, and you'll thank yourself in old age. Jose says, Marcela says, you'll have to leave us. Great, thank you, Marcela, take care. Well, to the whole community, big greetings to everyone watching the replay too. If you made it this far, to this point, leave your comment and let me know. Hey, if we made it this far to this point, that would be great. It would be appreciated. He says, we're watching you on TV here, but he sent me messages on my cell phone. Say hi, Arturo, to Daniela. Great. Have an excellent afternoon. Have a great weekend. We'll see each other tonight on the live stream to talk and chat about what's happening. If it's something urgent, I'll send it to you in a short video or something so we don't go on for too long. And then at night, we'll talk about it in detail. Okay, but we're here. Well, if you have any reports, if you have any topic you think I should talk about, please send it to me. Later on, we have a small report that will show up for you about an object, a comet that they say has a... What do they call this? Technological signature? No. According to what Avilos says, this new comet could possibly have a technological signature. Let's talk about what he's referring to, what they've discovered, but we'll talk about that later. To analyze all this properly and have the full report ready, greetings Eliseo, greetings to the whole community. And yes, I always ask for all the comments every day and I give a bunch of likes. That's right, Eliseo. Thank you very much. A huge, great greeting. Also, MT says that in the United States, many people at work go to lunch at 12. That's why they call it lunch. Okay. Where does the word almuerzo come from? Let's see. The people from Monterrey say we have breakfast. You eat something sweet. They say almuerzo. There it is. Look, there it is. Mephistopheles is how he is, and then salty food. You don't skip that, nor do you skip it for others. They also don't say merienda. Well, you're right. We missed merienda, right? Merienda is like something you eat, something light. Let's say a fruit. It could be a coffee with bread or whatever. This one, I mean, everyone has some nuts or something, right? And then there's he says greasy tacos, but no, not watermelon. That's too heavy, he says. That's true. No, not that either. Well, not anymore. That's not used anymore. But before, people used to say that about avocado at night. No, now they eat avocado at any time. It doesn't matter. But they always used to say that, like no avocado at night or no avocado with milk. No, they actually go well together. They're just a bit heavier. You should try the experiment yourself sometime. Huh? Or try avocado with milk and any sweetener you like. Sol and Qua make an avocado smoothie. And if you see, you'll notice how good it tastes. I mean, Brazilians don't eat avocado with salt that much. For them, it's a fruit and they eat it sweet in smoothies, ice cream, and so on. And in Mexico and other parts of the world, in the United States, Avocado is eaten with salt, in salads, in sandwiches, in hamburgers. I mean, there, avocado is eaten with salt, like in a little taco. Here in Mexico, a taco would be a tortilla, you put avocado on it, add a little salt, and you can eat it just like that, right? And it tastes delicious. But over there, no. Because I lived there for almost a year, I lived with some Brazilians. I mean, a Brazilian woman and a Brazilian man. We lived together in an apartment, right? So no, like half a year, not that much, but well. And there was one day a week when I cooked for them, and one day a week they cooked so we could eat typical food from our countries, right? So when it was time to make guacamole, they loved it, but they thought it was really strange. And then I told them, hey, make the smoothie, right? Make the caipirinha. They also made caipirinha and so on. So the smoothie is really heavy. It's just a little smoothie like that. If you want to get rid of your hunger, just have a little smoothie like that. Just a little bit. I mean, half an avocado and a small glass of milk, a cup of milk, and you won't feel hungry for a good part of the day, right? I mean, it's heavy, but it's tasty. And not heavy in a bad way. It's just that it fills you up. I mean, it really fills you up. He says that's all a lie. Tocayo, what the thing about the avocado? Oh, that it's heavy. Yeah, that's just talk. It's just for show. I mean, but that's what people used to say, right? That's what grandma used to say, right? Or at least that's what I remember. He says thank you and sends greetings. Number 13 in the back. If there's anything new, we'll discuss it. Let me check. Honestly, I haven't seen that part yet, but let's look. Perla mentions Germany and mandatory military service. Now men aged 17 to 45 have to ask for permission to leave the country. Oof, that's a bad sign. Yes, Perla, greetings. It says reheated tamales with avocado and milk. I'm not a fan of tamales, but that should be gourmet food. Honestly, yes. What you just said is actually something very interesting. What you just said. About the avocado, but even without avocado, I mean, tamales with milk, I don't know why the heck, but they go perfectly together. They go perfectly together. This is what my 91-year-old dad says. He loves avocado spread on bread at night, and his health has improved. It's impressive because it's through the internet, and it's very, yes, exactly. It's the little bread. Well, it's ideal. Well, they love it here. No, him. This one? Then you get the classic situation where you buy avocados and they all ripen at once, even though you bought enough to last several days. And in just one day, they all ripen, and now you have to eat avocado, because if not, you didn't want to waste them either. So I offer them like, hey, I'll make you an avocado sandwich. Obviously, everyone says yes, right? And that's how we use up the avocado that's already ripe. He says we eat it in abundance, since on my farm, I have many varieties of avocado. Eliseo, man, that's awesome, right? Just imagine, that's how it is. In guacamole, ice cream, smoothies, whatever you want, right? Trumpet taco, too much arrogance, says Luis. How have you been, Luis? Greetings. Tocayo says, only alcoholic drinks are accepted, says Jose. Jose? He says Brazilians see things differently. For them, the sky is pink. Hello, Miguel. Let's hope all is well. Thanks for the thumbs up. Please help us with that. And later we'll keep talking to the whole community. Best regards. See you tonight. Anyway, the reports will keep showing up. Follow us on Telegram. That's where we send the notifications. Big greeting. See you later.